Dr. Velrax barely spared a glance at the unconscious human lying before him. Another carbon-based anomaly, weak and inefficient, just like the others. The medical bay hummed with activity. But to him, this was nothing more than a routine curiosity. Humans, fragile creatures, relying on soft tissue and water to survive. Their kind had spread through the stars, but in his eyes, they were nothing special. He folded his forearms behind his back, glancing at the bioscanner's readings. Predictable, organ redundancy, minimal, regenerative capabilities, laughable, bone density, inferior to most warfaring species. He let out a dry, clicking laugh, shaking his elongated head. This is the species giving the galaxy so much trouble. His assistants, a collection of various alien biologists, exchanged amused glances. This one barely survived the battlefield, one of them noted. A collapsed lung, deep lacerations, possible neural damage, primitive body structure. He shouldn't have even made it here. Velrax waved dismissively. Of course, they lack any meaningful biological advantage. A Zalzaron would have regenerated half these wounds by now. A Braxel would have entered a defensive metabolic state. But this, he motioned toward the human, is just inefficient design. Commander James Carter lay motionless on the examination table, his chest rising and falling with labored breath. His kind had been making waves across the galactic front, yet standing here, examining his battered body, Velrax saw nothing remarkable. He tapped the control panel, instructing the machine to run a full biological analysis. If nothing else, it would serve as another data point to confirm what he already knew. Humans were weak. Their success was an anomaly. One of the assistants hesitated before speaking. "Sir, if they're so fragile, how do they keep winning?" Velrax's mandibles twitched. "Luck," he said coldly. "A convergence of favorable circumstances. Perhaps a slight evolutionary advantage in strategy, but biologically," he glanced at Carter with disdain. "A species that should have gone extinct on its homeworld." A soft chime signaled the test completion. The results were being processed, the machine compiling a full breakdown of human physiology. Velrax turned away, already bored. He would skim the report later, but nothing in the human genome would surprise him. He chuckled, his voice laced with condescension. "Let's see what the data says about this human resilience myth." The analysis was complete. Velrax expected nothing but confirmation of his beliefs. Biological mediocrity wrapped in an evolutionary fluke. Yet as he scanned the data, his amusement faded. The room, once filled with quiet murmurs of agreement, fell into silence. He leaned in, his elongated fingers twitching slightly. The numbers didn't make sense. Cellular regeneration, abnormally high. Neural activity, still firing despite severe trauma. Blood composition, adapting in real time to neutralize foreign pathogens. He ran the data again. No errors. One of his assistants hesitated before speaking. "Sir, this can't be right." Velrax ignored him, his mind racing. The human's immune system wasn't just reacting. It was evolving, adapting. His body, despite the injuries, was actively repairing itself at a rate unseen in species with such a short lifespan. "Run a comparative scan," Velrax ordered, his voice unusually sharp. The system complied, displaying side-by-side biological data from various known species. He watched as the human readings outperformed creatures long thought to be biologically superior. His mandibles tightened. Impossible. Carter's body should have been shutting down, drowning in pain and failure. Instead, his system was compensating, rewriting its own limitations. Muscles torn apart were already mending. His oxygen-starved brain showed neural pathways rerouting, adapting to the trauma. A different assistant stepped forward, hesitant. "Sir, if their biology is so weak, then how?" Velrax didn't answer. He was still scrolling through the impossible numbers, his mind struggling to reconcile centuries of scientific understanding with the anomaly before him. For the first time in his career, he questioned whether he truly understood the nature of life itself. His voice dropped to a whisper. This shouldn't be possible. Velrax could no longer dismiss the data as an error. He pulled up deeper genetic analysis, his mind demanding an explanation. How could such an unassuming species possess traits that defied logic? He accessed the human's evolutionary history, and what he found only unsettled him further. Earth, a death world by every known metric. Violent climate shifts, relentless predators, biological warfare waged at the microscopic level. A planet that should have broken its inhabitants. Yet, humans hadn't just survived, they had thrived. Their skeletal structure, while weaker than some species, was designed for endurance, not brute strength. Their muscle fibers adapted to repetitive strain, making them capable of prolonged exertion. Unlike most creatures that relied on raw power, humans were built for longevity, and their minds, neuroplasticity beyond anything he had seen. Their brains rewired themselves under stress, turning trauma into adaptation. They weren't just intelligent. They were fluid, capable of thinking in ways no machine or genetically optimized species could predict. Velrax played battlefield footage from previous encounters. Humans continuing to fight with broken limbs, pressing forward despite injuries that should have rendered them immobile. Soldiers dragging themselves through hellish conditions, refusing to surrender, refusing to stop. His claws tightened involuntarily. The secret to their survival wasn't in raw power. It was something far more terrifying. They don't just adapt, he murmured. They learn. They overcome. One of his assistants shifted uncomfortably. Sir, if this is true, then every assumption we've made about them is wrong. Velrax said nothing. He stared at the data, at the history, at the undeniable proof that humanity wasn't weak. It was unstoppable, Carter stirred, a low groan escaping his lips as his eyes flickered open. Despite the damage his body had endured, his vitals were stabilizing. He shouldn't have been awake, shouldn't have been conscious, but there he was, blinking against the harsh medical lights. Velrax stood over him, staring as if seeing a human for the first time. Not as a primitive, not as a weak, fragile thing, but as something far worse, something he couldn't explain. Carter coughed, then grinned weakly. I take it my test results were interesting. The room was silent. The assistants, once eager to mock human biology, now kept their gazes low. None of them dared to speak. Velrax hesitated before answering. The arrogance in his voice was gone, replaced with something else. You shouldn't be alive. Carter let out a raspy chuckle. Yeah, we get that a lot. Velrax studied him, his mind racing. He had seen resilient species before. He had seen creatures evolve over millennia, but never like this, never this fast. He turned to his assistants, his voice grim. If they keep adapting like this, no one in the universe will be able to stop them. No one responded. There was nothing left to say. The truth was undeniable now. The doctor had laughed at human biology. Now, he wasn't laughing anymore.